Welcome to tonight's Just Talk, Talk Just broadcast. This year, we are focusing on justice movements across the world and how we care for ourselves within them. Tonight's broadcast is titled The Cost of Caring, Justice Fatigue, and the Work of Hope. Tonight's forum is sponsored by the Center for Social Justice and Reconciliation and the Katie Geneva Cannon Center for Womanist Leadership at Union Presbyterian Seminary. We would like to welcome our panelists, Reverend Dr. Teresa Fry Brown, Associate Dean of Academic Affairs and Bandy Professor of Preaching at Emory University's Candler School of Theology. We would also like to welcome Reverend Dr. Joshua Morris, Assistant Professor of Practical Theology at Union Presbyterian Seminary. Finally, we would like to welcome Sam Ziegler, Pastor and Head of Staff at Gayton Road Christian Church, producer of this webinar series, and a teacher within the Virginia Public Education System. Our moderator tonight is Reverend Dr. Lakisha Lockhart, the Interim Director of the Katie Geneva Cannon Center for Womanist Leadership and Associate Professor of Christian Education at Union Presbyterian Seminary. Dr. Lockhart, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sam. I'm so excited to be here. Good evening to you all, and welcome to Just Talk, Talk Just for November, entitled The Cost of Caring, Justice Fatigue, and the Work of Hope. So as you enter, please put some things in the chat. Let us know where you're streaming in from. We would love to know where you're joining us from, so please put that in there. And we're excited to have you joining us with this conversation as we explore the toll that sustained justice work can take, particularly in under-resourced communities and systems marked by inequity. This panel will grapple with the realities of burnout in ministry settings, grassroots institutional settings, as well as public school settings, while lifting up practices of resilience and hope that sustain the long journey toward justice. So lean in, get comfortable or maybe uncomfortable with this conversation and participate as much as you'd like, putting questions in, all of the things that, the amens, the emojis, we want all the things. I promise you, it helps the conversation. And so be prepared for this conversation that will be honest and hope-filled as we think about caring for ourselves and our communities in the struggle for a more just world. So before we even begin, let's just take a deep breath as we just care for ourselves in just a moment. So a deep breath in. Let it out, rub it in wherever you might need it most. I don't know how your day was, but this is going to be a full conversation. So breathe when you need, get what you need while you're listening. And I see different folks joining us I see North Charlotte, I see Newport Beach, I see different folks. So hello, welcome, great to see you, Janet, Mark. I see Reverend Linda, another chaplain, hello. Some folks from Virginia, I see you, hello, welcome. So we're excited to see you all. And so I would love to start off. I'm excited because we have three panelists here that already their introductions have happened, but they're just representing so many different places where we're going to talk about justice fatigue, from institutional wise in an academic setting with our team here, but also as a former chaplain. And in particular, I know Josh, you were chaplain, an Army chaplain for 15 years as well. So that's another level of experience that we're bringing in. And then I know, Sam, you're bringing in your ministry setting, but also being a public school teacher, right? So I just feel like we have lots of spaces where we are bringing this conversation in. So I will start with how each of you define justice fatigue and what are its core features in your experience, kind of in your areas that you find justice fatigue. So I know there are three of us on the screen, so I am going to start with whoever's on my right, which is you, Dr. Josh Morris. So if you don't mind starting us with that question, and then we'll go from you, Dr. Fry Brown, and then we'll end with Sam. Awesome. Again, how you define justice fatigue.
Awesome. Thank you for the invitation. When I think of justice fatigue, I think of this idea, this existential weariness, this exhaustion of trying to move the needle of justice, one little increment only to get knocked back, maybe even further back than where you started. And so instead of key and core features, I think of core feelings, right? I mean, that's kind of what I do in pastoral care. But I think of this feeling of distress. I think of the feeling of feeling betrayed, of feeling guilt that we couldn't do more, shame, maybe then just at the end of it, just a feeling of apathy of this, it doesn't even matter. Every time I try something, it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really move the needle. So why bother?
Thank you for that. Dr. Fry Brown.
So I think in terms of justice fatigue, I remember writing about this about 15 years ago. And then because of this tsunami of trauma that we've been under for the last few months in particular, generationally, it is a disappointment that people that protested and died and worked for changes in society, that their work may have been for naught. And so in that era, I worked with Vincent Harding, who was one of King's speechwriters and started the Center for Nonviolent Justice and all these other things. And all the work that I know that that group of people were doing and my grandparents were doing. And now I'm thinking about what are we leaving for the next generation? So as to just keep treading and thinking about what everybody else has already done, and with just a modicum of guilt because of the fatigue of wanting to throw up your hands and say that's it, but you understand that someone else, you're doing whatever you do for someone else, but your body begins to react. Your socialization skills are a little bit on edge. I just told a group of people yesterday, I still know how to cuss, but so I can't just be pleasant all the time, right? And so it's that kind of, what was it for? Why is this happening? We thought we had done this already. And that to me creates this sense or sensibilities about tired of doing the same thing repeatedly, and someone else seems to be winning all the time.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Sam, what about you?
So for me, this fits in two different places. Both the public school, I've been teaching in the same school district for 3 years now. This is my third year, technically 3.5. And the likelihood of me as a new teacher in this district, and new teachers in general, leave usually in the first 3 to 5 years. That is when new teachers tend to leave. There's a lot of reasons. For some people, they just find that they're not cut out for teaching. But a lot more frequently, it's the strain of not having support. It's the strain of not having a useful curriculum. It's the financial burden of having to buy supplies for your classroom. And that I can say is definitely exhausting. And so for me, it's trying to weigh those things against and knowing that I won't be able to fix all of the prejudices and things that exist for the students in my school. And I teach at a majority Black school. I won't be able to fix the world for my kids. And so I have to go in every day knowing that I can't fix what's going on in their lives. I can't fix prejudices that other people bring against them. And so that is the main tiredness there. But I also, to follow a little bit off of what Dr. Fry Brown said, there's a bit of a generational exhaustion. My family on my mother's side, our surname is Berenbaum. It's German, and it is German Jewish. And my grandmother has instilled in all of us, all the grandkids, from a very young age, this sense of justice and this sense of we have to speak up. We have to make sure that everybody has this justice. And so for that whole side, my ancestors have done some justice work already. They've survived some things already, or they didn't. And so all of that weight, all of the ancestral grief, all of the ancestral struggle is also coming through into literally into our DNA as we try to navigate doing the same exact thing over and over again.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you so much for that. And just hearing, I mean, even just resonances between what the three of you are saying, but even coming from different experiences and bringing in the generational piece of justice, of the exhaustion of protest and of not seeing change, right, in the various ways that we're seeing it. And so even as we're thinking about like this, and I'm just noting that we've now got folks from Chicago, Dallas, Minneapolis, other places that are joining us. So thank you all for being a part of this conversation. And as we're thinking about how long this is, right, or as I think it was Theodore Parker that started it, but it was popularized by MLK, Martin Luther King. The arc of the universe is long, right, but it bends towards justice. So how do we root ourselves spiritually, emotionally, physically in various ways when the arc is very long? And the hopeful return to justice can sometimes feel farther away. I feel like, especially as you named, I think Dr. Fry Brown, in these recent months, it has felt maybe even further away. Right, as we meet on election evening, right? So I'm curious how do we find that, even though this arc is long, how can we root ourselves in these various ways, spiritually, emotionally, physically, realizing, as you all mentioned, it takes a toll in so many different ways. I don't know, whoever wants to take that one first. I see Dr. Fry Brown's mouth forming.
So both in the work I do in the academy and the church at large, I find myself saying, not all of us are going to make it out alive. But that's the reality of when you are living, period, right? Something's going to go on. But what I try to do in the church is have us return to Hush Harbor, where we started turning more to each other instead of on each other. That communalism kind of piece. And as I said to a group this Saturday, talk to someone who is older than you and someone younger than you about how they are feeling, because you have experience, but you also have new means. And so we can do hyperbole about how wonderful different civil rights movements were, but they also had some drawbacks. So when I think back to not finding out until I was 45 that my grandparents desegregated a library because they didn't want to talk about it. But there's something about going back and knowing my grandparents and trying to think what it took for them to do that enables me to do some things now. At the same time, there's something in talking to my children, my grandchildren, about ways they are viewing the world and how they think we should navigate it, and then not critiquing either side, but trying to draw something from that works in our individual walks, but also our collective walks, because geographically we're going through different kinds of things, even though we know all these things are happening. However we identify ethnically, we may be experiencing different kinds of things. And then at the same time, and this may sound I'm usually a pessimist, but this may sound a little bit optimistic, but I also tell people that through all of these things, some of us have been here before. And we were able, bruised and battered and bloody or whatever, to walk through it. So I think that is the possibility of surviving this, living above, survivio, living above, is a blessing. So it's sharing with people that there are possibilities to get through this, no matter how long that arc is. But we're not going to just skate through it. There are going to be some bumps and bruises along the way, but there were people before us that also went bumps and bruises. So I'm not deifying the people before. It's just the reality of people try to, they some way develop ways to survivio, to live above it and live through it. And that's what I think we have to, I say both to my students and when I'm preaching or directing something or giving a workshop in the church, is using history and historical facts as a way to connect with to bridge what's going on contemporarily. And I was the immediate past historiographer of the African Methodist Episcopal Church for 12 years. And I'm always surprised at how ahistorical people are, right? And so it's even talking about what has happened across the course of history, or let's return to teaching in our homes. Let's return to teaching people, not just giving them food, but teaching them how to cook the food, because some people have never seen fresh food, right? So do some means that we can all work together on it. It doesn't have to be hierarchical. So those are some means, I think, that the arc has always been there. And whenever there's a step forward, I think, as Dr. Josh said, there's always someone waiting to push you back. It's no clearing. There's always someone that wants to push back. And so it's like being aware of and being able to read the room that I think bodes well for where we are now.
Thank you for that. I just know someone also put this in the chat. I wrote it down in my own notes, that turning towards each other instead of turning on each other, and the importance of kind of just community in this long arc, and just naming someone older than you, someone younger. Just again, these things that we can take with us. I'm holding on to that piece as well. So thank you for that as we think about that. Did either Josh or Dr. Josh or Sam, do either of you have thoughts around this long arc?
I'm glad to jump in. I just want to build on what was said because it was so beautiful and so timely. I feel like the power of story, that when we look at things as like one more election, one more protest, one more thing, it's very like goal oriented, and so that if it doesn't go a certain way, we feel like we get knocked down. But to be able to hear those stories, I love the older and the younger. So it's not just like, it's the familial stories, it's the community stories, it's the denominational stories, the human stories, and then like in our spiritual stories as well, is like, what does it look like to hold on to hope, like radical hope, and move through those times when it feels like we just keep getting knocked down. But then it's like, but this happened in my family, or this happened to people that I'm marching with. And so like, just to be able to remember, like instead of an arc, but it's also like a pendulum swinging. So like, where are we in that swing? And so like to be able to like hold on to that hope in the midst of really dark times. And I'm a pessimist too, so I join you in there. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with a little pessimism. I mean, the best folks. I mean, look. Maybe we'll just, what is it? The hermeneutics of suspicion. Maybe we'll just give it some other. I love that. Sam, did you want to jump in as well?
I'm a tired optimist, so I may be a slightly different path there. But I honestly echo what both Dr. Fry Brown and Dr. Morris have said, that at least for me, the only way that I can root in the midst of all of the chaos that's happening in the bigger systems is by going smaller and trying to create community on a much, much smaller scale, and not necessarily like within a 500-person protest, but when I'm walking down the street with my neighbors and we're going to go get ice cream, like that is the rooting for me, at least, because when we're holding like ourselves together communally, we're also kind of holding ourselves together and holding whatever it is that we're carrying together at the same time. Because otherwise, I'm a very tired optimist, and I'm probably asleep.
Yeah, or hurt, or so many other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, I appreciate that. So as we're thinking about this, and knowing that we have an optimist and two pessimists, I can't help but also think about so much of the work, how I think the language of toxic positivity has really come into play more recently, right? Like, let's just stay positive. Let's just keep like no matter what, like don't be angry, don't be rageful, just keep smiling. I'm like, I don't want to smile. I just want to be angry some days. And so I'm curious how we can find, I don't know if it's balance. I've heard some people use language of harmony as opposed to balance, or like whatever language you might want to use. How do we balance or find harmony with the honoring the work and the suffering that justice takes, with the hope that we have, without feeling like we have to be overly positive or always happy or always optimistic about what that work looks like, realizing it is work and it is suffering and it is sacrifice. But also, as you mentioned, Dr. Josh, there's hope, right? There is hope there, but does that always have to, lead to the positivity that is so often there, or does that make it seem less than? So I'm wondering what that balance looks like, if there is balance there, or if it's just we need to throw that whole piece out altogether.
So I said in these administrative meetings, as universities are being attacked, I sat in meetings with denominations. And so I'm going to add an adjective to me. Sometimes I'm too much of a realist because I've been there. If you haven't been someplace, it's hard for you to see what's happening. You haven't had the experience. And so for me, it is being a little easier on people that have never been there before, and saying, okay, but I need us to just think about this. This is about to happen. And then for somebody to say, no, it's not. And then when it happens, for me not to say, you know what, I could have told you that was getting ready to happen, right? And so it's honoring, when we talk about this necessity of the work, I learned when I was in college 100 years ago, not everybody can be on the front lines, that there's a particular place. And I think this is one of the things that is honoring the work and the suffering, but also bringing some hope into it. Whatever you are good at, that's what you should be doing. And it may not be on the front line with a sign. My job when I was in college was to raise money and call people's parents because somebody had to graduate. Okay. And at first I was upset about it. I thought, oh, everybody has the thing that they do. And now I usually say somebody has to be alive to tell the story. So because if not, things just keep repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. And so I've never used the word balance when the work that I do in social justice or social transformation. I use priority. Today, this is my priority, because if I try to balance something, my arms get tired and I'm going to drop something important. So that's not a word that's in my lexicon when I talk about justice work. It is today, when I get up today, this is what I have space to deal with. It doesn't mean it's not important to me. It means on today, this is where my energy can go. Somebody else's energy can go to that, but I don't have to feel bad about them doing that because that's their priority. So we don't have to get in an argument about, but you said we wear red t-shirts today and you have on a black t-shirt and now the whole thing's going to fail. No. Everybody has a piece that they do, regardless of age or station or belief system or sexuality or any of the barriers we set up. And I think that's for me, the promise of hope is when we can realize that everyone has a particularity in how they address injustice. And because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it's wrong. It means that, and from my perspective, this is what I can handle today. So please just give me this space. If today I want to sling snot and fall out all day, let me do that. It doesn't mean it's not a good thing to do. It means today I have to take care of Teresa. Tomorrow I'll be there early. But the reality is I can't do it day in and day out. And I tell my preachers that you cannot preach justice every Sunday and live, because you kill your people and you'll kill yourself. So you have to have some respite to do some joy work and then come back.
I'm writing that down. Can I preach justice every day? It's wisdom. Just writing that one down. You kill yourself and you kill your people. I mean, just absolutely. My goodness. Talk about being a realist. Like I think that was that for me. I remember once, because I was also not a frontline person, but I deeply wanted to be. I was like, oh, I want, but it was a similar, but no, you're in school. You need to go stay in school. Like you're going to go do something, go do the thing. And so I called, like I had phone numbers. I knew everybody's mom and daddy. I knew what it was. We had like little codes set up. We had someone else that would have milk in case there was mace. Like we had someone like you said, everyone kind of has a role. But realizing that it's okay to be your role, right? Like I feel like for me that was a hard one. It's like I wanted to be on this, and it was like, girl, you don't go sit down somewhere. Like that's what it turned into. Right. But realizing like what that meant now, like right, like realizing like how everybody played that part, and like that how important that was for the work that was happening, and like you said, the stories that get told or like what gets fought for after. So I appreciate that. The language of priority, I don't think I've not heard it in that way, and I appreciate hearing that. I feel like we're told we need to find a balance, we need to find a harmony, we need to find that in the midst of this. But I think naming it, no, what's the priority for today? Like you said, it's a day-to-day thing. So I appreciate that. I'm not sure if others, I know there's some stuff in the chat that's happening here. Like, yes. So thank you for naming that it's not necessarily a balance, but what is the priority in this moment and today here? I appreciate that. Thank you. As we, again, think about this, honoring the work of suffering and sacrifice, but promise of hope and not getting to the toxic positivity. So I appreciate that. And I didn't know if either Dr. Morris or Sam had anything else they wanted to add to that one.
I do. So I think part of it for me is that hope isn't a promise of ease or a promise of escape, and neither is like however we want to conceptualize salvation on a given day. It's a promise that something maybe gets healed. And if you've ever like gotten worse than a paper cut in your life, you know that that's going to get messy a lot sooner than it's going to heal, and it might heal into a scar. And that hope doesn't or shouldn't, maybe I should couch that slightly differently, isn't an escape for us from the like realities of the present, the realities of suffering that we may be going through on a given day. And if we are using it as that, then that might be venturing into the toxic positivity and asking to skip out on all of the things that happen between the paper cut and, okay, my finger's better. And so that I think is my main point. I'm going to stop.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Moore, did you want to jump into? Yeah.
Yeah. When I think about toxic positivity, I think that it, like most platitudes we get in life, like it's centering the person who's speaking, right? So it's usually devoid of context. It's devoid of living into like the lived experiences of those who are suffering. And so like to get away from that means to like our genuine hope is grounded and it's rooted in our own lived experiences. And so people are telling us it's not that bad. You weren't going to change anything anyways. Like it's not, is it really that bad? Because I heard this when I did my own research, right? Like, and these things can feel like that rage, like as it comes up into us, but like to like stay on message, like of your, like the work you're doing, and like know that your grief and the things that have called you into this work are real, and like letting that be like the continued fire that like moves you forward. I think, because the toxic positivity it's always going to be there, and it's always from usually people on the sidelines who aren't in the work, but that might be going beyond the question.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. It's like the people that want to be talking about the work but aren't necessarily doing the work.
Yeah.
Well, we have folks like that too, just all around, right? That want to do that work. So I appreciate that. So as we're thinking about prioritizing kind of this work, I'm thinking about the systems that you all find yourselves in, whether it's public school, higher ed, ministries, just the very, chaplaincy, like all the various places. And I'm wondering, what factors do you find contribute to the experience of fatigue, right? Of this burnout, of this, of doing the sustained justice work, right? Because if we have to prioritize, sometimes the systems that we're in make it much harder or make it even more exhausting. And so I'm wondering what systemic factors contribute to this experience of fatigue, of needing to prioritize oftentimes. Like what does that look like in your various settings and places? Let's see who wants to jump in first. I see no, I see you thinking.
So I think when I talked about the need for communalism, I think that fatigue is increased when one isolates oneself. When one has no one to scream in front of, no one to commiserate, or no one to say, even if you don't believe it, for someone to say it's going to be all right. Kendrick or whatever, right? We need somebody to reinforce or to at least co-sign on the possibilities. But when one is isolated, then if I just sit in my house and I start thinking about what was, what is, and what possibilities there are, and I have no sounding board or no communicative partner, then the fatigue is increased. And I can physically feel myself getting heavy and not wanting to go out of the house. But when I have someone that we don't have to have a solution, but to just talk about, what I heard today? What do you think about this? We have no solutions, but there's the ability now to bring some of the venom and stuff holding you down out in I don't like the word safe place, in a trusted group of people or persons that I think helps us with that work to sustain the work. And I think that a redefinition of sustaining, which is what I said last time, the idea that if you're a person that is involved in this transformative work, doesn't mean you do it 24/7. It means there has to be some self-care. There has to be some rest. There has to be just playing with children or something fun, right? Because we can take ourselves so seriously, we will die before we see the victory, right? And that to me, I think that systems are set up to slowly kill us. If not, the timing of everything that has happened lately would not have been laid out the way it was, where it kept coming and coming and coming, and people didn't have time to take a breath. And so someplace you have to build up your own, you have to build your own place. I'm back at Hush Harbors, where you can go and be nurtured back into a sense of being, a sense of belonging, a sense of living in spite of. Right? It's the not giving over your life to someone that doesn't appreciate it. Does that make, that makes sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just taking notes. I'm just
right. And I don't think systems are constructed to save anybody, let alone themselves. Or we would be at the state we're talking about, well, this person's not doing this, this person's not doing that, and why didn't this group do this? No, they're people that happen to be hanging out together. So my justice work, I have to find a group of people to hang out with that don't have to be like-minded, but have a vision past themselves, a vision of possibilities past themselves. Yeah, I'm going to stop there.
Oh, I love that. Have a vision past themselves. Absolutely. Okay. So Dr. Josh, Sam, did you want to jump in here thinking about other systemic factors that contribute?
I had thoughts, but that was beautiful. I'm chewing on that. Like the only thing I'm not even adding, I'm just throwing this into the room. This thought of like that organizations, regimes, however you want to say it, like kind of like thrive on our apathy. They want a sense of hopelessness. They like an apathy to not push back. And so like recognizing that the community, friendship, joy, playing with your kids, like little things that might feel insignificant in the grand scheme of things are actually the most profound and hope-filled things we can do. And so like that hope in that way is like a discipline. It's a practice. It's a thing that we like to counteract. Like at least me, like I feel like I have this like a gravitational pull to apathy. And so to be able to like resist that at any moment is a way that I feel like can get me out of feeling like I'm all alone in my room, like you were saying, Dr. Fry Brown.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Sam, anything else you want to add or no? Okay. All right. No pressure. I just want to make sure everyone is feeling heard. I mean, just nuggets of wisdom falling everywhere. I'm just taking notes.
It's isolation in public ed too, and bureaucracy, and I guess I think this is a tendency within ministry settings as well, and within healthcare and within academia. But in education, we talk a lot about contract hours, and how I'm only supposed to be working from 7:10 in the morning to 2:25 in the afternoon. And it's all over the internet. Everybody knows that most teachers work more than 40 hours a week. And if I were to math that out, it's like 38.75 hours a week of my 7:10 to 2:25. And so a lot of the fatigue just comes from like that it blends the line between work and the rest of our lives. And I know, especially for my colleagues, our school starts at like the kids get off buses at 7:10. And so we are starting our days at like 7 o'clock because we got to be there before the kids are there. And so we get to school in the dark. And then by the time we leave, if we have to stay after to grade, if we have to stay after because we're involved in some kind of enrichment thing, or we're coaching a sport, or we're trying to do anything that like helps better the students that we're serving, we leave in the dark. And so that over time, and I think a lot of times pastors are also driven to over help, or like do things that are beyond necessarily what it is that is written in our job description that we're supposed to do, or outside of our contract hours, however we want to refer to that. And that just, it's not even just justice work. It's just the force of systems. And that will run you down physically, mentally, emotionally, all of it.
I was having a conversation with someone, and I was like, hey, when was your, like, I had sabbatical last semester, so I'm like, I'm fresh, I'm good. And I was asking like a pastor, I was like, oh, well, when do you go on your sabbatical? And they're like, well, I don't have a sabbatical. And I'm like, wait, what? And so for me, I feel like part of this work is, right, like if we're talking about systemic factors, like, is that I think similar to what, you've all have been saying, if we don't take the time to rest, right? Like part of it is we have to ingrain it into what we're doing. So why is it not part of your season at the church? Like, right. There's a season for a sabbatical. There's a season for this, or they're like, why is it not baked into what you're doing so that it becomes part of how you all move as a congregation or as doing something like, but how do we make sure we put in these pockets of rest? Like, yes, of course, when, it's justice, sometimes it's chaotic. We might not know when we need it and we have to take it, but in other places, how can we start putting it in so that way we have it there when we need it? And I'm just thinking about these ways that we don't lean into the places where we can find rest and where we can find these moments of community, of not letting it be isolation. I'm also looking at the chat and I see some folks, Sandra, unfortunately, sometimes doing the work triggers isolation from others, especially when we are one of few not talking about it, but actually doing the work. Right. So that's right. So, and again, more of that just happening in the chat. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're actually going to turn to questions from the chat. So if you have a question that you would like to get asked, go ahead and start putting it in the chat. I'm going to ask one more question, and I have more questions if you all in the chat don't have questions. So I'm happy to keep going. I mean, I have three amazing folks. I have plenty of questions here. But I will
add something before you ask the question. I was thinking as we were talking, Ella Baker said, people cannot be free until there's enough work in the land to give everybody a job. But what I like about her is, as she said, strong people do not need strong leaders. And I think in her word with SNCC and with Students for Democratic Society and all those things at Montego, one of the things that she said, and I think this is where pastors run into problems, academics run into problems, people that care for other people run into problems, is that we are enculturated to think that that's the only person that can lead. That we are not actually in a position, like I've been working on succession plans for I don't know how long. My job is to make sure somebody follows where I am, right? But I work with a lot of people, or have worked with people in churches and in the academy, that think that everybody ends with them. So that leads to more fatigue because they never give over any piece of the work to anyone else. And the people that they're leading think that's the only person, which is why when somebody's assassinated, things fall apart. Because there is no structure for anybody else to lead. And I think we have to do a much better job of that. Not just because if you take the rest, people will say to a pastor, well, that's what we pay you for. If you take time off as a teacher, well, the substitute doesn't know, so my kids are suffering, or this program's not going to run. But we have to shift the culture about what the responsibilities are and what sabbatical means to refreshing people in the work. Right. And that if you have one leader, everything's going to fall apart. Strong people do not need strong leaders. Okay.
That is so good. And how do we get everybody on board with that? Right. Understanding that and the practicing of it. And like, what if every place had a succession plan?
Yep.
My goodness, like what if that's now part of like church documents, right? Like when you come in, what is it, and how are we training? How are we curating space? What does that mean? What is the plan? Like that, I think that is so powerful, and that it's not just you. I feel like coming into this, I was having a conversation with one of my Black women mentors, and she was just like, if anything happened to you, God forbid, they would replace you tomorrow. So you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your family. You have to make choices that, that you might feel risky, but like that's also a realization that some of these systems are not going to care for you. So you have to care for yourself. So I think having a succession plan, realizing that it is not just you, and what you put in place around, I think, it's so vital and so important in doing this work. Again, so I see some questions getting ready to start, but I wanted to ask one more because we talked about story, and I want to get a chance to capture a story if anyone is willing. But if you wanted to share a moment when you personally felt justice fatigue or burnout in your efforts towards justice, and any of the practical strategies that might have worked for you in kind of recovering from that fatigue or that particular burnout. Just because I know we're talking about story, and I just wanted to offer an opportunity if anyone wanted to share something before we turn to the questions from in the chat.
I'm trying to edit one that I can tell. That's what's going on.
Well, the unedited version. No, I'm just kidding.
You do. I think for me, when you, as a Black woman in the academy, and we're less than 5% of those with PhDs, right? And I'm a full professor. So you think that you've worked and worked and worked and followed all the rules, and then somebody comes and brings out all the dog whistles about Black women because you disagreed with them in a meeting. At that juncture, I was going to pack up boxes, leave my office, and another sister, an older sister who cleans the building, had to talk me off the ledge. Because my thought was, I believe, I was raised with education is the way out. And I did everything I was supposed to do, got to the top of my profession, and still hear a dog whistle about an aggressive Black woman. And that to me was the height of, I expected out here, but I'm in an institution where I work my behind off to get someplace and still get this. So yeah, that was yeah. So I was going to go on leave. I was doing all kind of stuff, but it took somebody else who had been watching me and said to me, "You are the hope for where we can go." That made me pull back and say, let me find a way to navigate this differently than packing up and walking away. Yeah.
I think I have one. So I was a education major. Like originally I was a music education, then I was French and education, and I did my student teaching in a majority white, relatively wealthy school. And I had maybe, across all of my classes, I had maybe 5 students of color. And one of those kids would come by during what was supposed to be my prep time, because they had a study hall, and would ask for help with their homework. Because they tried asking their teacher and they were told to figure it out. That particular student was also told that they wouldn't amount to anything. So I spent so much time like working with that student. At the end of my time there, there was a active shooter situation in that class. And at the end of that day, we finally got to send all the kids home. Everybody was okay. The next day, same students came back to school. And my students of color were told that they were the reason, that people like them were the reason that that had happened. And my trauma response over the years has changed from fawn to fight. And I wanted to fight some of my coworkers. I did not, because me getting a felony was not going to fix the problem there, actually. And after that year, I took 5 years off of education. I couldn't walk into a school building because I was so messed up from the active shooter situation, but also spending so much time trying to help my kids. And at the very end of the year, the one student had come to me and said that they gave up. That nothing they did was doing anything. And so they were going to give up. And I knew that I wasn't going to be back next year. So there wasn't anything that I could personally do aside from try to talk to some of my coworkers who weren't being jerks and be like, hey, keep an eye out for this kid. And I had to leave. I went and got 2 seminary degrees because it wasn't a thing that I could do. And that was a total removal from everything that I had been doing prior to that. And so in that particular case, the only thing that worked for me was that distance. It was taking a sabbatical of sorts for 5 whole years and doing something that, while it is now very integrated in my head, at the time was a complete departure from all of my content specific things and my educational psychology and everything else. And I had to go do something completely different before I could come back into education and not be so jaded by the system that I could actually try to put time into helping my kids again. And I'm fortunate that I had the opportunity to jump ship for 5 years before coming back. Because I know that doesn't happen for everybody.
Thank you for that. I'll also mention that Reverend Dr. Jamie, mentioned in the chat that when she experienced justice fatigue and burnout, she eventually took a 6-month break. And it was what she needed, and she was able to be well because of that. So sometimes that step away, it might be part of what you need. Dr. Moore, did you want to share anything before we got ready to turn to the questions?
I'll go real quick because I want to hear the questions. I just was really struck by the line, the hope of where we can go. Dr. Fry Brown, you mentioned that at the end. I just that sentence of like hope of where we can go, like the potential, like if we're not taking care of ourselves and we're not like don't have people who are building us up in this, like where does that hope, like where does it go? So I just was really struck by that. Up top, you mentioned that I spent some time as an Army chaplain, and when I got back from a deployment, I was very disillusioned that we were still at war. And so I don't know if it was being naive, being arrogant. I don't know what it was, but I thought like my justice efforts were going to like end the war, which is kind of funny in hindsight. I don't know if I really thought that, but like I did think it was going to make a difference, like meeting with other veterans, like Veterans for Peace, like doing things to try to like turn the tide, or like writing academically, like that this was going to do things. And I smile now because as we've been saying for the past hour, like it's more about the micro relationships along the way, like people who saw me when I was burnt out and when I was low and when I was like just needed care from people. Instead of like changing the vote on something, it was more about these like sojourners on the way to like a more just and more peaceful world. And so that's what comes to mind when I think about burnout in the work of justice.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I also come from a military family, so I remember family members feeling a very similar pull to, oh, we can fix it, or we can do this, we can do that. So I can only imagine at the level of a chaplain of working through that. So thank you for sharing, all of you, for choosing to share what you did. I appreciate that, and things that kind of did or did not work. A question in the chat from Janet Mullins is, how do you distinguish between justice fatigue and spiritual depletion? And what practices restore the soul without silencing the call? I'll say it one more time. How do we distinguish between justice fatigue and spiritual depletion? And what practices restore the soul without silencing the call?
So I don't think they're separate. The biblical text tells us we're supposed to be involved in justice. So what practices restore without music? For me, it's music. I have to get up and move. I have to sing. If I'm going into a situation that is going to be very disheartening, I play music all the way there, deal with it, and play music all the way back home. And so that's my prep, and that's what fills me. And it's all different types of music, because it's something about connecting with life. And I have to do that. The other thing is cooking. That's that. And playing with my grandchild, because that's where hope is for me. We may have messed it up, but somebody else can probably do it. And I think my grandparents felt the same way, that there's hope in seeing the possibility of someone else carrying on or doing things differently than you. But I see them as the same.
Yeah. They're super, super entangled. Like I can't really distill out one or the other. And 100% I agree with music and with cooking. But one of the things that one of my education professors told me to do very, very early on in getting my education was to make something called a happy things file, and to keep stuff. Like if a kid wrote a thank you note, keep it. If somebody like sent you a bunch of like feedback about, hey, this actually made a difference, keep it. And then on the day that you are feeling like nothing is working and it's not worth it anymore, you can come back to that. And right now I have as my phone background, a picture of a card that one of my students gave me at the end of last year. And the student, like their little letter boards, and that student customized them for every teacher that they gave them to. And mine says, love you more. Because the kid would ask at the end of every class, hey, Ms. Z, do you love me? Yeah, kid. I love you more. And then would run off so that I couldn't win that argument. And that student has now moved on to high school. And I have a letter board that says, love you more. So obviously the kid won. But it's things like that I keep coming back to, because they do kind of like, they give me more hope, more energy when I can come back to it, and to knowing that, hey, like there's a kid out there that knows that they're loved. And that for me is definitely like part of the call, and restores my soul.
I can't cook, but I can eat things that are cooked. So I like eating good meals. I also like music and being with my kids. A thing I would do as a hospital chaplain when things would feel depleted and fatigue, like so heavy, like one visit, it's like get to the next visit. Like the thing that Sam was mentioning that really sticks with me is like, first of all, I love the idea of that board and having a happy things file. Like I need to do that tonight. I'm gonna do that. So thank you. But like, go to the next visit. And so for me, it was like, what's behind the next door? You know, like where's the call? like continuing to call me and continuing to pull me into new spaces as a way to like honor why I'm in this place. And so now like teaching, like it's into the next session, or it's with the next student or whatever it may be, to like get up and keep going. But bringing those things with me. And eating good food.
Who doesn't love some good food? I just feel like maybe if we get the chefs on the call to make some good food, then Josh, you and I can enjoy this. No, I appreciate that. Well, I know I'm just a person. I do a lot around like just play and movement, and so for me, it was always dance, like dance movement. I would literally choreograph a song in tears, like whatever it took. But also, I'm a big I like to color and to do puzzles and to do like word searches and any of those kinds of things also help bring me back or help me kind of just get out of whatever that like just get into like my space. Even little things like I have little lightsaber chopsticks that I like to use when I'm eating sometimes because they just make me very happy. They glow and it looks like I'm eating glowing things. But like little things that I think that are like helpful and rejuvenating, and because as we mentioned, it is hard work, and I mean for me I don't separate the two either. But it's like how do you just remember that even these little things can be really important. I'm looking at our time, and my goodness, this conversation has been rich and wonderful, and our time is almost up. So with that, I'm gonna give us one final question. So no pressure, but all the pressure. So one final question is, what advice do you have for people just beginning their justice work, or those struggling to continue? And or if there's just a last piece of thing you just want to say before we get off this call, either of those things. So either some advice for those beginning, those continuing, or just one thing you want anyone on this call to make sure that they don't leave this call without.
Happy things file.
Happy things file.
Make a happy things file. It doesn't just have to be things, but anything that reminds you why you're doing what you're doing, that you can come back to when you're asking, why am I doing what I'm doing?
That's good. Dr. Morris?
I have two thoughts. One, I mean, this kind of a little bit of a thread we've been saying throughout the hour, but this feeling of that you're not alone in it. Another thing I want to say is like back to toxic positivity, like is to trust your gut and trust your instinct. Like if you're feeling pulled into something, if things feel like spaces where you can speak up or speak out, like to trust and not like diminish your voice. Like we need all the voices. And so if people on the sidelines are saying, oh, you're dismissed, oh, you're just too young, or you're just too new, or you're just too X, Y, and Z, but like listen to the pessimist here and say, no, that's not true. Like speak up. Like we need your voice. And so even if you feel fresh in it, like you're needed.
Thank you. Dr. Fry Brown.
So I guess I probably said this before, but it's important to know to be kind to yourself, because there's no penultimate answer to any of the things we're facing. And because something doesn't work does not mean it's not a possibility. It may mean a different way is needed to approach it. So forgive yourself, even for your complicity, and even for the times you didn't feel like going. Because trust me, tomorrow there's going to be another thing for us to deal with. So yeah, I think that's probably it.
Well, thank you. So we're going to have our file. We're going to remember that our voices matter no matter where it's coming from. And we're going to remember to have grace with ourselves in the process, and a whole bunch of other wonderful nuggets that we've all probably taken from this call. So thank you all for this conversation. I am grateful for your time, your energy, your expertise. Thank you all for joining us. I'm honored to have this wisdom in this space. So with that in mind, thank you all for tuning in to our Just Talk Just November conversation, the cost of caring, justice fatigue, and the work of hope. I hope for you on this journey and all of the things, realizing that we can't just talk about justice 24/7, that you also need rest, that your voice matters, and don't forget that file and to have grace with yourself. So thank you all. Take care. Be well.
Please join the Katie Geneva Cannon Center for Womanist Leadership and the Center for Social Justice and Reconciliation for events this month and next before Just Talk, Talk Just returns in February of 2026. Thank you for being here and have a good night.